Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is the return of the SuperNova Show, and I am your host, Colton Roberts. And today, it's been over a month since we made one of these things, but today we've got Mrs. Sjena and Rudy Whittaker herself, Miss Jill Danaitis. So,
Hello. Thanks for having me.
oh, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm always open to talking all the things, Dungeons and Dragons, Drakenheim, and any nerdy topics. I'm all for it.
Yeah. So what? I'm trying to think how So I know we've talked about. You don't just have a love for like Dungeons and Dragons. You have a love for cosplay and Star Wars and all those things. So, yeah. What got you into like geek fandom?
That's a good question. So, I mean, growing up, my brother was also really into like video games. So, like me and him would like play on 64 and stuff like that. So, kind of growing up, we'd watch anime. Like it was just part of our childhood that we leaned into, especially Pokemon. Like Pokemon was like an integral part of my childhood growing up. And then, as I got older and became a full-fledged adult, I was like, oh, I'm making income. I can spend my adult money on amazing things like, video games or movies and kind of really get into it. And then with Dungeons and Dragons, like when I was working, I actually started working with Kelly and Monty and Joe from Dungeons of Drakenheim. And Kelly initially like invited me to play Dungeons and Dragons in a home game, and that's where that started and grew into such a love of tabletop games and all things like that. So yeah.
It's honestly like I had heard of Dungeons and Dragons, but I'd never played it until like 2018. So it was like a few years into 5th edition, and I really enjoy it. Like, of course, there's all the hoopla about what's been going on, but hopefully that rectifies itself and stays that way, because like I want to go watch the movie, I want to enjoy one D&D, but like it's an entire situation. But yeah, like it's gotten to the point where like my kids, I have a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-month-old. So they are getting to the point where they can finally understand Dungeons and Dragons. So like they play along, and yeah, they don't do the best, but it's fun to see their minds work. Situations, and it's wonderful.
It is wonderful. I'm just recently my daughter, who's just over 2, she gets so excited to bust out our toy lightsabers. She'll be like, lightsaber, and I was like, oh yes. So we're slowly getting her into that kind of stuff too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really is. Like you said, I played Pokemon. I know you're never supposed to ask a woman her age, but I assume since you played Pokemon when you were a kid, you're probably around 30, 30 something. Like I'm 31 years old. So like I played Generation 1, and now it's got to the point where like I bought Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah.
And I have played all of 25 minutes of it, and my kids want to come up and be like, Dad, this is a thing. And I'm like, I don't understand the word that they're saying because I haven't played the game much. Even though I have it, I just adult life is hard, man.
Yeah. It's you get glimpses into that, life again, but I agree. Like I kind of come in and out of enjoying Pokemon. Like right now, I feel like me and Pokemon are like, okay, we're on a pause, but I have these like resurgences where I'm just like obsessed with it. So yeah, I totally did play Generation 1. Like I still have my lime green Game Boy Color, sitting upstairs, and I've collected all of the Game Boy games, and then skipped through the advanced games, and then own everything on the DS up except for Scarlet and Violet. So that I just didn't buy the newest one, but I should add it to my collection for sure.
Yeah, it's like I will say, as someone who, all right, I've played it 15 minutes, really, but there's a part in the game where they definitely released it way too early because I got trapped in a bed for 22 minutes.
I heard about that.
Yeah, so you normally wake up in your room and there's a bed, and apparently if sometimes it will glitch and you'll just stay there for like 20 minutes while it just spins you around in a circle. So like
I've read articles about like a bunch of like glitches that were happening where people were like half their body was over in some areas, and it was just getting really interesting how glitchy it was.
Yeah, it's so weird that like they just released the game last I guess a year ago at all, and this one is so glitchy. But yeah, I know like I like Star Wars, but I feel the same way. Like Episode 9 really killed my jam for Star Wars. Like I just like I just did not like it, and I still do not. But my wife, she does not like Star Wars at all, but she went to Star Wars Celebration in Chicago with me the year before Episode 9 came out. And at that time, we were just dating. So I was just like, okay, cool. Well, this girl is definitely the one because she agreed to go with me to this weird thing. And then she planned our wedding to be Star Wars themed and didn't tell me about it. And I was just like, and then like the pandemic hit. So then we had to move it. And by the time we moved it, I was in love with Star Wars again because like it was good and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, like it was it's been an interesting time. Like all their like Andor I think was good. The Mandalorian I think is good. I honestly am one of those people that if they never make a movie again, I'll be happy.
Oh, okay.
Their Disney Plus series I think are so good that I really like that way of exploring that content. Like
I find it's just you get more of it, right? Like there's longer series. I find it's like it's not one all bunch. I will say I haven't watched Andor yet. Me and my husband are still trying to find like the schedule to like watch it together because we always sit down and we'll watch it. He's a really big Star Wars fan. I'm a big Star Wars fan, but like it was really part of his childhood as a big piece kind of growing up. So for me, we also had a Star Wars wedding, well, kind of like a geek chic kind of wedding. May the 4th is our wedding anniversary. So, it's I find that certain shows have really like piqued my interest, and certain ones are like, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. I love The Mandalorian. Like I really find they came out with a bang with that one. And little Grogu is just so cute. How can you not love him? I don't know.
Yeah, I am so ready for March the 1st. Because, like, I liked Andor, but it didn't blow me way like the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian did. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited for March 1st. But what other kind of, like I am a huge Lord of the Rings fan. So, like, I thought, I love Rings of Power, which I know is not a very popular opinion. Like, but as a person who, I think a lot of creative stuff comes from Lord of the Rings. Like you wouldn't have half of Dungeons and Dragons without Tolkien.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have a lot of fandoms without Tolkien. Because like he kind of just him and C.S. Lewis kind of just opened the floodgates for fantasy series and stuff. So
yeah, and honestly, like and again, no spoilers for anyone watching if you haven't seen it already. Like by the end of the first season of Ring of Power, I was like, this is amazing. I really liked where they kind of tied it up, but I know me and the guys were talking about it when it was first coming out, and I was like, yeah, I was having a hard time like staying with it because it was such a slow burn. And I was like, where are they going to go with this? Why is it taking? And I'm like, surprise, surprise. Like it's Lord of the Rings and it's a slow burn, but I was just like blown away by how slow it was. And then eventually they picked it up and I was like, okay, I can see where this is going and I like it.
Yeah. Like now, if no one is watching the show right now, like I can observe to see that no one's watching it, but just in case we can throw the spoiler tag up there. Like I love the Halbrand reveal. It's so good. It is so good. Like, even though I had been anticipating that he would be either Sauron or the Witch King, like the entire time, like the flip to I'm a nice guy to boom, I'm the most evil person in the world now.
I honestly didn't call it. I was like, he's someone, but I don't know who he is or if he's gonna lead us to somebody else. Like it was one of those moments where I was like, I don't know what your role is here yet. And when it happened, because I was even looking up, I was saying before we were on, it's like, I don't mind spoilers. Like when I watch things, if I get spoiled, to me, it doesn't spoil like the journey of still getting to see and understand shows and movies and stuff like that. So I was like looking it up. I was like, oh, how does Sauron come into this? And behind the story of it, it makes sense the way it happens, but at the same time, it just didn't click in my mind that was him. So when it happened, I was like, what? No, yes, no. Because he was such an intriguing character. But, it's I can't wait for the second season to come out.
I know, it's going to be a long 3 years.
Is that how long it's supposed to take?
Well, I mean,
no.
it is. Like, I mean, granted, they did, like, it's so weird to look at the budget for the first season is more than they spent on all 6 Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit movies. $54 million an episode.
Oh my gosh.
For that show. So it's like $440 million just for that first season. And that is insane. Like,
that is huge.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely something. Like that's one of those things where I would rather, like the same thing with the Star Wars that I said, I would rather have series, because guess what? You can pump out, 10 hours of content if it's on TV.
Yeah.
And it still looks great. But guess what? It takes them multiple years to make a movie that's only 2.5 hours long. And then you have to wait multiple other years for that, where they can release a season of the Mandoverse like every year.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like we had Book of Boba Fett last year. We got Mando. We got the Ahsoka show.
Can't wait for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, like.
Although I will say, hot take, I was not 100% happy with Boba Fett.
Oh yeah. The best parts of Boba Fett didn't have Boba Fett in it. It was all Mando, Luke, and Grogu and Ahsoka stuff.
Yeah, true.
All that stuff. Like, the Boba Fett show was only good when we didn't have the Boba Fett episodes.
And I wanted it. I wanted it to be good. I was like, we love Boba. We want it to be good. But every episode, I was like, so when's it gonna really like amp up? And it maybe it will in the second season, if there's a second season. But maybe not, and then I will be sad.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I don't want to spoil Andor for you, but I feel kind of the same way about that show, is because we know where Andor ends up. So all the ancillary characters, we have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
And that makes it more intriguing. Like, I know he dies on Scarif. So, like, right? It's kind of like when you know the end of the journey. Yeah, like.
Although that was what the movie was kind of like. You knew they all died, and again, spoilers. Sorry, if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. But like that, we knew like they gave their lives to get this information. So you're like, so everyone's dying. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. That's definitely true. All right, so I'll throw that back down, but maybe if I need to throw it back up, I'm just gonna leave my mouse over it just in case. But yeah, so I know you guys have been playing Drakenheim for 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'll be honest, like, it was a weird change when you guys went to digital. Like, as a person who I am just now watching it, like we said, I've talked to you about before the show, is that where it just went digital. But I guarantee it was even more weird for people who were watching it, who had like because you guys skipped like 6 months in between. I think it was like episode 12 and episode 13.
Yeah.
You guys skipped that, and then you did the anthology stuff with the. Oh my lord, who's calling me? Oh, my mother.
Untold Tales. Yeah, it was like a time in between of where we weren't like. I guess when the pandemic started, like we weren't really sure how it was gonna go or how quickly we'd be able to like make it back in person. And I want to say when it was that 2020, right?
Yeah.
When that happened. And at the time, a lot of people didn't know it, but I was also pregnant. So that was like a big thing. It's just like as this pandemic was happening, as like we weren't really sure what was happening with COVID. We were trying to kind of figure things out as we went, while making sure like the whole team was safe as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But as I'm watching it, like I really like. There are some moments that I cannot wait till I get to Fate of Drakenheim and get to see you guys back in the basement again, because like the little moments between Sebastian and Pluto where they're like hugging and stuff, you can't really. That doesn't exist when you guys aren't together, and but I'm really excited. Like the show is so good. Like,
oh, thanks.
Monty and the three of you guys are the best. Like honestly, it's one of those things where like I've watched Critical Role and I can't stand it.
Oh no,
because I guess because they're like, I don't know if it's because they're actors or because I've watched a little bit of Vox Machina and it's so good, but I don't know if it's just that whenever I was watching Critical Role, I was going through a phase in my life that I'm just like, I don't want to watch. I want our actual like not famous people play, and you guys like do such a good job. Like the fact that Monty does all these voices, and like Veo and Rudy are distinctly different characters. Like you definitely do a really good old woman voice. Yeah, it's awesome.
My attempted Southern accent of sorts.
As someone who I live in the South of the United States, it sounds great. It sounds like people I know in real life, and it's wonderful.
That's great feedback. I practice it a lot just to be like, I hope this is getting better as I go. You know, I have to really think. I think speaking in a different accent is like really hard. Like I've been trying to practice like other accents. I'm like, maybe my other characters will have different accents in the future. I'm like, it's so difficult to just pick it up and like start to try and like move words around in your mouth that way. So I'm glad it comes across as authentic.
Yeah, like I DM a little bit, but all my characters end up being Russian because that's the only accent I can do that's not Southern or just my regular speaking voice. And then by the end of the session, my vocal cords hurt so much.
Yeah, it's work.
Yeah, so I have no idea how you guys do that, and like Monty switches in between accents.
Yeah,
like it's insane. Like,
well, and I think coming back to like again this kind of Critical Role versus like Drakkenheim kind of idea where I think they're two different types of shows, right? So one is, yeah, you have voice actors and you have this like full-on production, and I think one thing that we really tried to maintain in our show is like the feel of we're friends in a basement like playing D&D, and we want to bring people in and invite them to join us in those sessions like you would with your own friends. So you know, the three of us, like me and Kelly and Joe, I've been playing as a party for a few years now, but like we knew each other and we knew Monty too before. And we were just a group of friends. Like we turned on a camera, we were trying a thing, and so far we've had like a lot of fun with it. And you know, the guys that I work with on the show, like they're so talented. Like Joe is hilarious. Like always brings such when you think about like improv, like, and you know, the and mentality like moves on and always tries to like go with what the group is going with, but always that sense of like biting humor, which is hilarious. And then Kelly always has a plan. I always get stuck in these situations like I don't know what to do. Kelly always has a plan. It's beautiful. And then Monty is just like, again, so talented.
What could possibly go wrong?
We're always just like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Who knows? And then again, like Monty comes up with these amazing ideas, and like we give him something and he just goes in this amazing direction with it. Sometimes totally out of left field and surprises us. Other times it's like a new thing. Like there's a lot of balance of creativity and teamwork, I think, that comes from our group playing together.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's really good. Like there are times where, like when I had COVID, that I was like yelling at my TV and I was just like, no, because you guys would like forget something. And I'm like, well, of course, because you guys are playing it live. And like, and then I like when Monty reintroduces those things. Like in the first season, you like meet the fish people and apparently eat one. And
Yes, I
he
did.
talks about the Duchess, and then that plot line went nowhere. And then it resurfaces in season 2, where you guys' characters are in Dransman and all that stuff. And now I'm at the point where, like, I remember like the sister of the Duke of Dransman. You guys rescue her at the Elven Ruins.
Yeah.
And like you guys are now heading towards the lighthouse. You just got on the boat, and you guys are going to head that way. And I'm like, you were supposed to wait for her to talk to her. Dang it. To talk to the.
We're an impulsive party sometimes. I think especially, well, when you think about certain campaigns, like there's those pre-built campaigns which feel like it's a little bit more like linear in where it goes. With homebrew and open campaigns, I find sometimes it's hard to like not direct us, but like have it where it's like things line up. Like we just will be like, decision, let's go here. So if we see the shiny object, like we kind of go towards it.
Yeah, like that's the inner, like, as someone who I wrote a campaign, and yeah, it's very hard to get people to be like, okay, well, I did that. Like I would always just write a recap for what they did last time and just read it to them so that they would remember what would, because it would be like, it would sometimes be like 2 or 3 weeks in between stuff. So I would just write as we were playing. I would just like start writing the things that they said, because guess what? If I don't write it down, I might not remember that one of my characters snuck into the other character's room and murdered their cat. So that's a thing that happens. So yeah,
note taking is important for players out there watching this. I try to be the note taker of our group, but I sometimes go back and I'm like, what is this note about? So clean and legible articulate notes are very good. And you know what? Monty's really great, I would say, at like something will happen and later it will surface and we'll be like, we forgot about this thing that's coming to bite us in the butt now.
Yeah. And I do like that, like in the first season, there was the conversation with Pluto and Lenore about him wanting to put his nephew on the throne and all that stuff. And
was that the secret conversation that we had to leave the room for?
Yeah, and y'all walked out, and I was like, I wonder if this is real or not. And then I looked at the comments, and it was Monty commenting in the comments. He's like, yeah, they're not allowed to watch this episode. And I'm just like,
oh, we didn't. Yeah, we try to maintain that kind of like that barrier, because if we don't want our characters to know, like we try to be really good at like not spoiling it. So yeah, I haven't seen that episode. I normally go back and I'll rewatch them to be like, okay, how do we do? What happened? Let me just recap what we did last week. And yeah, I didn't watch that episode. So of all of them, I think that one, and then no, I think that was the only one that was like secret.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I know there was one with Sebastian as well that like y'all left, and crap, who is this?
Was that with the Queen of Thieves? Again, spoilers if anyone's watching.
No, it was with whoever his mentor was. I can't remember his name.
Oh, Eldrick?
Yep.
Yeah.
Talking about how the Academy kind of wants to run Drakenheim secretly. Yeah. And if he's the mage and helps influence a young king, that they'll get to do that and stuff like that. And oh my god, I might have accidentally spoiled that for you, and I feel bad now. So oh well.
No, I would say most things are, again, not to spoil anything for you either, but like most things are out in the open.
Yeah, like I have purposely, like I'm on their Patreon, but I've purposely not gotten on their Discord because I'm 2 years behind on the campaign and I can't.
Oh, so we have spoiler channels. So if you did
Yeah.
want to like that's like one part of the Patreon. So for those out there who want to join us and think they don't want to get spoiled, like join us. There's so many other conversations happening.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't want to someone accidentally do something, and I want to experience it. Like, I already experienced the one spoiler, and I really don't want to experience anymore because the show is so good. Like, you guys do such a good job. Like,
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's good times. And so you guys are all from Canada, right?
We are, yes.
Okay. So not to get a little political, but so as someone who, like, my grandparents were English, how did you feel when the Queen passed?
I'm not super involved with like keeping up with royal stuff. I mean,
because
she was older and it was sad.
Like, I remember when the news broke at work, like, I love the Queen. And I'm an American, so all of my friends were like, "Why do you care about this?" I'm like, "Because she's so awesome." And I was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna ask Jill," because I mean, technically, I guess she was your head of state.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, "Oh, well, maybe she'll have an opinion on this and why I was sad about it because I mean, she was a wonderful woman, but she had no impact really on my life except for that she existed." So
yeah. I think it was something that it was getting to a point where we all kind of knew it was coming eventually, and it as Canadians, yeah, we are connected to England and Britain in that sense, but I think as the greater community, it was felt overall.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that was a real Debbie Downer right there. But yeah, like everything you guys do is good. I gotta say, and I will, like, as someone I've been watching the show, and Monty does a really good job of not featuring like creature names. Like, he never talked about the Mind Flayer or what was it in season 1 that was in the basement where your dad was?
The Beholder?
The Beholder. Yeah, like, he never called it that. And I'm just like, now that they've made their own book, I'm like, I'm glad he never called it that because now we've had all that shenanigans at Wizard of the Coast. And if you're just like, you describe it, but you don't use those names, like, they can't ever get mad at you for like using elf or dwarf or whatever, because that's totally like that's
there's certain publishable material that you can do. So yeah, and if there was anything that was like inspired, so for example, like I don't even remember what we called it, but I'm gonna call it the Beholder in the basement. Thinking about like there's inspiration and then there's like what does it become in our streams. So like I find delirium is a really cool mechanic that Kelly and Monty kind of came up with in terms of like adding that in can warp anything into something new. So it's a really unique thing to add into a game mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, of course, like there's things like the Rat Prince, like yes is one of the best things.
Iconic.
And I saw a comment on the last, I think it was like episode 17 that I watched, that was like, the players aren't learning their lesson because you guys are like reassociating with the ratlings, but it's different characters, so they wouldn't know not to manipulate them. But I was like, yeah, but so you guys have to play them as, but the fact that you guys immediately were like, let's manipulate these ratlings to do what we I'm like, that's so funny. That's the thing that everyone's just like, hey, these little things, they won't bite us in the butt later.
I don't know what we were thinking. I honestly, when I remember going back and watching Monty's description of the Rat Prince, being like, how did we not think this was a bad idea at the time? How did we not? But I think in my head, I was like, oh, he's a cute little rat. You know, he's a little bit terrifying, but we're going to adopt him as our like mascot. And then you see like in the Drakkenheim book and in like the miniatures and stuff, if you've seen from the first Kickstarter, I was like, he's terrifying. How did we ever think that this was a good idea?
Yeah. And then there's the entire thing, like whenever you guys drive Oscar out of his house and you're telling the ratlings, hey, yeah, go to this house. And I'm like screaming at the TV, no, the demon statue is down there. It's going to be bad. Yeah. And then it turns awful.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh. And that's like a lot of like good TV shows. That's the way you act whenever you're watching it. You're like, you know what the characters don't know. And you're screaming at the TV. So that's how you know that like this is a good production, because you're invested in the people. And I do have a question. So when Shadows of Drakenheim started, it you know, like they have the intro. Are you the voice for that intro?
I'm not. No, okay. I'm not the voice. Yeah. I believe we had Monty's partner do the voiceover. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, this is so good. Like, good job, Jill. But good job. Oh man. Yeah. I know you guys went to PAX Unplugged, right?
We did. Yeah. It was my first con in like years, which was super exciting.
What was that like?
It was great to be around like people. Like I always say when I go to conventions, I'm like, I'm around my people. Like I'm just surrounded by people who are like-minded in terms of like liking the same hobbies and being in the same space and mindset. And it was just like super refreshing. Even though it was busy and there was lots going on, I felt like it was just like filling up my cup a little bit to be in that. And then to see, you know, the guys had a panel. It was amazing to see them like up on stage doing their thing, and to think that even a few years ago, it was such a different environment going to PAX. It was super positive. So it was a great experience.
Yeah. Like I remember going to Star Wars Celebration in 2019 thinking to myself, it was the 20th anniversary of The Phantom Menace, and people do not like that movie. No. So they played it and no one booed, and I was so happy. But I reckoned, I was like, well, the people that would boo are not going to be the ones who spend the hours to get in line and also spend the thousands of dollars to go to these places. So like there are sometimes like you'll go to an anime convention and people are going to hate on the things that you like because they're there for something else. But like, yeah, most of the time you have fans that are going to see this thing because they like this thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I can't wait for you guys to go again. Like if you guys go, because that's in Boston, right?
It's in Philadelphia. PAX is in Philadelphia. Okay. I believe we're still working on plans, but we might be going to Gen Con this year. But like again, not everything's up in the air. We're still trying to figure out you know, what we're doing. But I would love to go to Gen Con. That would be like an aim for mine, and then to go to PAX again. Oh, yeah, but you know, still got a while to plan all the things. So
yeah, I definitely but yeah, like December, because it was in December, right?
When it's the start of December.
Yeah, that's really like the worst time of year to like have a convention if you're not prepared for it. So like I couldn't go this year because I didn't know that you guys were going until like a few weeks prior. I was like, man, I just bought Christmas presents. So at least this year I can be like, ooh, I want to go meet the gang. And
keep an eye out. I mean, anything that we plan on going to will be posted officially on the Dungeon Dudes social media. So that's always a good place to like check it out. We try to post as soon as possible when like we know what things are happening, but you know, and anything's possible. You never know when plans might come up or change or happen, but I'm hoping that this year will be a year of more conventions. Who knows though?
Yeah, because the farther away we get from the pandemic, the better we are. Like,
Yeah.
it's knock on wood, we don't have to deal with that again. So
hopefully we're exiting that phase of our lives.
Amen. Yeah, like it's been a interesting time. But so who do you prefer to play as? Rudy or Veo?
That's a good question. Oh my gosh. I think Veo is easier for me because she feels more just like myself placed in a character. So I don't have to think about it as much. Like, even the snacking and the food part of Veo, I'm like, that's just me dialed up a lot. I'm such a snacker and a foodie, and I don't have to put on a voice. I just kind of act a little bit more in it. Versus Rudy, I have to sit back and think. There are certain parts of me that come out in Rudy, but I do have to act a little bit more when it comes to like her. And again, her voice, we talked a little bit about that, but even just like the mentality of like being an elderly-ish woman and having different life experience is really interesting to think about. But I also do love, like, my first love of any character class is Ranger. So that's also a good combo.
I was about to ask what your favorite class was, or what class. I don't know what the future looks like, so there could be a where you guys make a different character after this. But if there was a character that you could play, or a class that you could play that you haven't yet.
Oh, I think we froze a little bit.
Yep, I think
yeah.
So I'll
there we go.
Yep, I'll.
So a class I haven't played yet that I want to. Ooh, there's a couple. So I've never actually played like a full caster before. Other than like in the Untold Tales. So that would be interesting. I don't know which one I would play. I wanted to play a druid for a while, but I haven't fully thought of like, I like to have an idea about like why I'm choosing. So I don't just choose a class and then like make a character around them. I actually like to make my character first and see kind of where they fit into, which is kind of a backwards way of doing it. But even for Veo, like I knew Veo was going to be some sort of like alley cat that was surviving on the streets, and that's how she kind of fit into Ranger at first, and then took on Rogue. And Rudy, I knew she wanted to be some sort of soldier, which is how she kind of fit into fighter. So it's interesting to think about. Like I do want to play a druid, but I would have to know how it fits into like the character that I want to enable and create.
Yeah, I've been wondering, like, because I don't think we've seen a druid in Drakkenheim. Like, obviously, I think if we have, you don't have to say anything.
I won't say anything.
But because I am curious, like, I know Wizard, Warlock, and Sorcerer, they're all part of the Amethyst Academy, but a druid is a nature mage, so that one wouldn't make a whole lot of sense of being part of that guild. So, like, that idea, at least in my perspective, is really interesting. Is a magic person who doesn't fit into the divine source or the arcane source, and that could be really interesting, at least in the case of that world.
Yeah, especially Drakenheim and thinking about the factions. I think there's spaces, like if you wanted to make a case for it, I think there's lots of different ways. So I mean, the academy is so vast that what are the different like aspects of it that we haven't featured maybe in the stream yet. So thinking kind of outside the box that way could be a way that could bring in that kind of magic, but who knows? Yeah. So there's druid. I love barbarians too. Like I know Rudy is a fighter and she's a strong fighter, but like barbarians have a really just like lovely place in my heart. The second character I ever made was a barbarian. It was so fun to just like smash all the things. I find it really interesting, like in Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakenheim, the new Kickstarter book that's coming. The guys have done a really cool job of like creating new subclasses. And one of their subclasses is a barbarian, where you essentially like anything that you pick up is a D12 weapon. And so like when they were going through and doing play testing and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I want to play that barbarian because I love just like taking random things and being like, yes. You don't have to rely on your weapon per se to like just give you damage, because then that puts you in a box of like what's possible. I like to think outside. Other times I've like, I don't know, pile drive people off of like a balcony. Like, what are the ways that you can think outside of just like, again, like I said, your weapon and what you can do? And I find that's a really fun challenge of playing D&D, is like, what are the creative ways that you can use things within the mechanics of the game?
Yeah. So since having a child, has that changed the way you play Rudy? Because he's got 10 kids.
Any mama bear vibes that you get from Rudy, that is purely because I am a mom and I like understand there's a certain mentality for me that comes from that. I think initially like being in that mind space when I created Rudy was a big reason why she's ended up the way she has. Also since like I wanted to so Rudy is initially created from all the characters from Red Riding Hood. So she is the grandmother, she is the huntsman, she is the wolf, and she's Red Riding Hood. But like a lot of her personality comes from where I was at the time, being a new mother as well, and wanting to have like that fierce mama bear protection of these characters, of her kids that I created.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what else. We're getting pretty close on time. Yeah, I don't know. It's been quite a day, but I really appreciate you coming on. Like I'd love to have you on again when I'm more prepared. Like this discussion has been really good. Like but yeah, like you guys do great work. Like I have tried. I want to get Joe on the show. But I know he's super busy, and like I'm really thankful. Like you immediately said yes, and that was awesome. And yeah, like we've
never done anything like this before, so this is a fun time for me, trying something new and connecting with people who are passionate about, again, the same hobbies and the same interests. And especially, again, I'm always up for talking all things Drakenheim. So I just hope I'm not spoiling anything for you.
Yeah, no, not at all. Like I've been very like tried to be very protective of that. I want to talk about it. Like I want to talk about it so much, but I'm like, ooh, we just had one person watching, so I was like, I have been trying not to say too much because like now that they're gone, like there's so much about the show that's like the entire fact that like the demon you guys talked to is the one that took Mouse is such a like I cannot wait to see where that goes. Like obviously Katarina von Kessel is out there being the Queen of Thieves and
sneaky Queen of Thieves. Oh my gosh, she's one of my favorites only because like every time I think I'm like we've gotten ahead of her. No, we haven't gotten ahead of her. It's like she's just a wonderful NPC to like challenge us like intellectually and to think like outside of just what's happening in the moment. I love that about a lot of the pieces of Drakkenheim. It's just sometimes you think linearly in a story and you're like, oh yes, there's all these things happening outside of you that can affect what you're coming up against. So
yeah, like I cannot wait because I think Shadows has 50 episodes. I'm 18 in, so I'm 32 episodes until we get the reunion. Like it seems like it's been so long since I saw Sebastian, but it's only been Sebastian, Veo, and Pluto. It's been so long, but guess what? I guarantee I'm glad I've watched it the way I have, but I feel so like the people that are just now seeing the union of the six of you guys together, like they must be freaking out because it's been for them, it's been a 2.5 year long wait, and For me, it's only been like 6 weeks, but it's still like unbearable. And
I also think that like there's almost an element of you forget a little bit that they're there if you're watching it over a certain amount of time. And a little bit of a spoiler, but not too much. Keep an eye out for the cameo. Yeah. Because like after watching it for say a whole year, you're like, oh yeah, that happened before. Versus watching it as it's already done, there's a little bit more of like time difference there, time compression.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. Like, obviously, we all know, like, you know where it goes because you're a part of it. You film it every Tuesday. It happened. But like I am like it is probably like one of my favorite things to do during my like I watch it every day on my lunch break.
Aww.
And I try and watch it while I eat breakfast because between those 2 times after that my wife does not like fantasy stuff at all. Yeah. So when I get home, it's time to watch my son Ezra, and she is not down for watching people make voices and roll dice and stuff. But so
that's okay. I prefer playing it to watching it too. So.
Oh yeah, like I haven't played like I haven't really played with like anyone that wasn't like my offspring in almost 3 years. Like before the pandemic, it was like my friends, they used to own like a game store.
Oh, cool.
So, like every other weekend, we would go there and play Dungeons and Dragons. And the pandemic killed their store because they weren't making any profit. So then we all kind of like separated because some of us lost our jobs because of the pandemic. And, you know, being an adult is hard. Like keeping friends as an adult is hard.
Yeah.
Like, yep. Especially
with kids.
Yeah.
Add kids in there, it makes it even harder.
Yeah. Like my best friend, he like my kids practically like they call him uncle. Like so like him like he plays with us a lot. So like that's part of like the involvement there. And like one day I told him like as the pregnancy announcement was coming, I was like, buddy, we got a 5th player at the table now. And they're all 3 of them are boys. So he already like is like super into the things that I like. He'll watch you guys and like he'll zone in when I'm watching like a Dungeon Dude video. I was like, yep, that's Mr. Kelly and Mr. Monty. And he just zoned in. Like
do you have the 1, 2, 3 and the ABCs of D&D books?
I do not.
You have to look them up. They're the ABCs of D&D and the 1, 2, 3s of D&D and best kids books. Like so good. So highly recommend for tiny humans.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, like you guys, I can throw the spoiler tag back down, but like you guys have been very beneficial to my life. Like I really like I wouldn't have like the pandemic was hard for like everybody, but Monty and Kelly's videos helped a lot. Like and finding another source for my creativity, because even if you can't like do stuff yourself, like I work 50 hours a week, but if you can watch other people be creative, you can kind of like focus yourself through them. So I really appreciate it, and I thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. Everything. I'm really glad that you're enjoying it and that it can be impactful. You know, that is my goal in anything that I do, that it can impact someone out there and add to joy in others' lives. So it's good to hear that that's a thing.
Yeah, like absolutely. It is. It's you help a lot. So I appreciate it very much. But yeah. So I think that's gonna be where we wrap it up. Thank you, Jill. I really appreciate it. Do you have anything you want to promote before we leave for the 4 people that watch this show.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can join us on Tuesday nights to watch the fate of Drakenheim on twitch.tv/dungeon_dudes. If you want to take a look, you can watch the previous episodes at youtube.com/dungeondudes and join us for seeing where Drakkenheim goes. You can also find me on social media at Jill Nicest on Instagram.
All right. And pretty much I say this every show. You can follow me on Twitter at Colton Roberts 8, and you can follow the show at SuperNova_show. And yep, that's it. Signing out.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.